Arrival in chaos. The skies over Valexia Prime burned with streaks of red and gold. Explosions echoed across the jagged mountain ranges, and the ground trembled beneath the weight of destruction. Alien civilians, their translucent skin glowing faintly in the chaos, fled in all directions. Mothers shielded their young. Elders stumbled, and warriors fought a losing battle against an overwhelming enemy force. The invaders had come without warning. Sleek, black warships hovered above the cities, raining destruction with brutal efficiency. The Valexian defenders, brave but outgunned, fired their energy cannons into the sky, but their shots fizzled harmlessly against the invaders' impenetrable shields. Smoke rose from the ruins of once thriving cities, and hope was slipping away. Amid this chaos, something unexpected happened. A deep rumble shook the air, louder than anything the Valexians had ever heard. The invaders paused their assault, their ships suddenly realigning their positions as if sensing a new threat. High above the atmosphere, space rippled and tore open. A massive shadow emerged, blocking out the light of Valexia's twin suns. It was a human battleship. The Valexians had heard rumors of humanity, whispers of a fierce species from a distant system. Some called them warmongers, others protectors. Few had ever seen a human, let alone their legendary ships. Now, one of those ships loomed over their planet, larger than anything in the Valexian fleet. Its hull gleamed like a polished blade, and its weapons bristled with an energy that seemed almost alive. Panic turned to confusion. Civilians and soldiers alike stared at the sky, unsure whether to cheer or flee. The invaders hesitated, their formations breaking as they scanned the human ship for signs of hostility. A sharp, static-filled broadcast suddenly cut through the airwaves. It was a voice, deep, commanding, and unmistakably human. "Attention, forces of Valexia Prime," the voice said. "This is Captain Ryan Voss of the UNS Resolute. Humanity will not stand by while innocents are slaughtered." The message was brief, but it carried a weight that made even the invaders pause. Then, without warning, the Resolute acted. A single, blinding pulse of energy shot from the battleship's main cannon. It wasn't aimed at the planet, but at the invader fleet. The pulse sliced through the vacuum of space and struck the lid ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ship disintegrated in a flash of light, scattering debris in every direction. The remaining invader ships scrambled to adjust their formations, their shields flaring as they prepared to retaliate. On the ground, the Valexian defenders erupted in cautious cheers. Could this be salvation? Or was this just another force with its own agenda? Inside the Resolute, Captain Voss stood on the bridge, his expression unreadable. The crew around him worked with military precision, their hands gliding over glowing control panels. The battleship's eye, a calm female voice named Seraph, spoke over the comms. "Invader fleet has adjusted trajectory, Captain. They are preparing a counterattack." Voss nodded. "Let them. Activate defensive measures and keep our shields at maximum. I want to make it clear that we are not an easy target." "Understood," Seraph replied. The captain turned his attention to the holographic display hovering in the center of the bridge. It showed a map of Valexia Prime, its cities marked in red to indicate their dire state. He grimaced. This wasn't humanity's war, but he couldn't ignore the atrocities happening below. "Send another transmission," Voss ordered. This time to the Valexian leaders. A younger officer hesitated. "Sir, we haven't confirmed if they'll even listen." "They'll listen," Voss said firmly. "They don't have a choice." On the ground, the transmission reached the Valexian High Council, a group of frail but wise leaders hidden in an underground bunker. Their faces were etched with despair, but the message from Captain Voss sparked a glimmer of hope. "Do we trust them?" one council member asked, their voice trembling. "We don't have the luxury of mistrust," replied another. "If the humans want to fight, let them. We need every ally we can get." Above them, the Resolute continued its assault. Smaller energy pulses darted out from its secondary cannons, targeting the invaders' flanking ships. Each shot was precise, disabling enemy vessels without risking collateral damage to the planet below. The invaders retaliated, firing volleys of plasma at the human battleship, but the Resolute's shields absorbed the impact with ease. On the bridge, Voss watched the battle unfold with cold determination. "They're testing us," he muttered. "Let's show them what humanity is capable of." "Seraph, prepare the EMP disruptor." "Acknowledged, Captain," the AI replied. "Charging EMP. Ready to fire in 10 seconds. Voss turned to his crew. "Brace for impact. When we fire, they'll know we mean business." Below, the Valexian civilians and soldiers held their breath as they watched the sky. The human battleship glowed faintly, its weapons charging for another strike. The invaders seemed to sense the danger and began retreating into higher orbit. But Voss wasn't about to let them escape. The EMP fired, spreading out like a web of light. It caught the retreating ships in its radius, disabling their systems instantly. The invader fleet hung motionless, powerless to fight back. For the first time in days, the skies of Valexia Prime were quiet. The Valexians looked up in awe, their fear mingled with newfound hope. But as they celebrated, one question lingered in their minds. Why had humanity come? And what price would they demand for their help? The warning shot. The once chaotic skies of Valexia Prime were eerily calm. The human battleship, UNS Resolute, loomed above like a silent sentinel. On the ground, Valexian warriors and civilians watched in stunned silence, uncertain if they had just traded one threat for another. Inside the Resolute's command bridge, Captain Ryan Voss paced slowly, his boots echoing against the polished metal floor. His sharp eyes scanned the tactical display, showing the now dormant invader fleet. They weren't destroyed, just crippled, and Voss knew that wouldn't last. "Status report," Voss demanded. Seraph, the ship's AI, responded immediately, her voice calm and precise. "Invader fleet remains inactive. Their systems are still recovering from the EMP. I estimate they'll regain control within the next 30 minutes. "That's too much time," Voss muttered. He turned to his crew. "Begin recalibration of the main cannon. I want a precision strike ready. Target their command vessel." "Yes, Captain," came the synchronized response. On the ground, suspicion brews. Beneath the protective dome of the Valexian High Council bunker, the alien leaders debated furiously. The transmission from Captain Voss had sparked a divide among them. "This is madness," shouted Councillor Drex, his pale skin flushed with anger. "The humans did not come here out of charity. They have their own motives. We cannot trust them. And yet they saved us when no one else would," countered Councillor Myra, her voice steady but tinged with frustration. "If they wanted to conquer us, they would have destroyed us already." The debate raged on, but the civilians outside had no such hesitation. Word of humanity's intervention spread quickly, and whispers of hope replaced cries of despair. Some saw the humans as saviors, others as opportunists. But all agreed on one thing. Valexia had been given a second chance. The warning shot. Above the planet, the Resolute's cannons glowed faintly as they charged for another strike. Captain Voss had no intention of letting the invaders regroup. "Target locked," said Lieutenant Harper, a young but skilled officer with an unflinching gaze. "Fire," Voss ordered, his tone cold and resolute. The main cannon roared to life, sending a concentrated beam of energy across the void. It pierced the command vessel with surgical precision, igniting a chain reaction. The explosion lit up the darkness of space, and fragments of the ship scattered like fiery embers. On the ground, the Valexians shielded their eyes as the brilliant light illuminated the sky. The invader fleet, already crippled, now resembled a shattered animal retreating with its tail between its legs. Voss stared at the display, his jaw tightening. "Seraph, open a channel to the remaining invaders." The AI complied, and Voss leaned forward, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "This is Captain Ryan Voss of the UNS Resolute. You have two options: retreat or face total annihilation. Humanity does not tolerate the slaughter of innocents. You have 5 minutes to decide. The Invader's Dilemma. Aboard the remnants of the invader fleet, their commander, Archon Cyrek, watched the Resolute on his cracked display. His once arrogant demeanor had been replaced by unease. The humans were an enigma, too powerful to ignore, yet too mysterious to understand. Cyrek slammed his clawed hand on the console, hissing to his officers. How did they disable our fleet so easily? What kind of weapon is this? They are unlike any species we have encountered, stammered one of his subordinates. We cannot fight them in this condition. Cyrek growled in frustration, but knew the subordinate was right. Survival outweighed pride. Reluctantly, he issued the retreat order. The remaining invader ships slowly powered up and began withdrawing from Valexia's orbit. A reluctant alliance. As the invaders retreated, the Valexians dared to hope. But Captain Voss had no intention of celebrating just yet. He turned his attention back to the planet, knowing the next step was just as critical. Seraph, open a direct channel to the Valexian leaders, he ordered. Moments later, a shimmering hologram of the Valexian High Council appeared on the bridge. Their translucent forms flickered as they stared at Voss with wary expressions. We have held off the invaders, Voss began, his voice steady. But they will return. Valexia's defenses are insufficient to repel them again. If you want to survive, you'll need humanity's help. Counselor Drex's eyes narrowed. And what will this help cost us, Captain? We are not blind to your kind's reputation. Voss smirked faintly, but his tone remained serious. We're not here to conquer you, Counselor. Humanity's strength lies in alliances, not subjugation. But alliances require trust and loyalty. Counselor Myra stepped forward, her expression softer than her colleagues. What would this alliance entail, Captain? Protection, training, and shared technology, Voss said. In return, you'll support humanity's broader mission. We seek to unite the galaxy against threats like the one you just faced. The alternative is extinction. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. Voss could see the doubt in their eyes, but he also saw something else. Fear. Fear of the invaders. Fear of being abandoned. Before they could respond, Seraph interrupted. Captain, I'm detecting a new signal. It's coming from the outer rim of Valexia's system. Multiple ships are approaching. Voss's expression darkened. Show me. The display lit up, revealing a massive fleet heading straight for Valexia. These ships were larger, more advanced, and more menacing than the previous invaders. Looks like your decision just got more urgent, Voss said to the council, his voice like steel. What's it going to be? The reluctant alliance. The hologram of the Valexian High Council flickered as Captain Rand Voss stood rigid on the bridge of the UNS Resolute. Behind him, the crew worked swiftly, their consoles glowing with alerts. The invading fleet retreating was a temporary victory, but the new readings on the sensors told a far more ominous story. Counselors, Voss said, his voice firm, I understand your hesitation, but we don't have time for debates. That incoming fleet is not just larger, it's better equipped. If we don't act together, Valexia Prime will fall. Counselor Drex sneered, his translucent skin shimmering in the dim light of his bunker. And what do you suggest, Captain? Handing over our sovereignty to humanity. Enough, Drex. Counselor Myra interrupted, her tone sharp. She turned her glowing eyes to Voss. What do you propose, Captain? Something actionable. Something immediate. An unlikely partnership. Voss nodded, appreciating her pragmatism. My ship has enough firepower to hold off the new fleet temporarily, but I'll need your cooperation. Your defense grid is outdated, but with modifications, it can complement our systems. I'll also need someone who understands your people's tech to assist us. Myra glanced at Drex, who shook his head in defiance. You expect us to trust a human with our secrets, our technology. It's that or extinction, Voss said bluntly. Choose. Before Drex could retort, Myra made the call. We'll provide what you need, and I'll assign one of our best to assist you, strategist Lyra. At the mention of her name, Lyra stepped into view, younger than the counselors. Her bioluminescent markings shimmered faintly, a sign of her controlled nerves. She had been listening silently, her analytical mind already piecing together the implications of this alliance. I'll do it, Lyra said, her voice calm but firm. But I'll need access to your systems, Captain. Voss studied her for a moment. She was different from the others, calculating but not suspicious. He respected that. You'll have it, he said. Welcome aboard the Resolute. Tensions on the bridge. Minutes later, Lyra was aboard the human battleship, standing amidst a sea of human faces and blinking consoles. The humans were efficient, their movements precise. Yet the weight of being surrounded by the unknown pressed heavily on her. Seraph's voice startled her. Welcome, strategist Lyra. I am the AI overseeing this vessel. I have prepared an interface to integrate your defense grid schematics. Lyra hesitated before approaching the console. The human's technology was advanced, far beyond what her people had imagined. She glanced at Voss, who was observing her carefully. You've seen war before, Voss said, breaking the silence. More than I care to admit, Lyra replied, focusing on the console. But never with allies like this. Voss smirked faintly. Let's hope it stays that way. A sudden attack. Before Lyra could fully integrate the systems, the alarms blared. The incoming fleet had accelerated, their ships breaking formation to encircle Valexia Prime. On the display, hundreds of hostile vessels formed a blockade, cutting off escape routes. They're jamming communications, reported Lieutenant Harper. No way to contact the surface or the rest of the sector. They're trying to isolate us, Lyra said, her voice sharp. This is a classic maneuver. They'll close in, squeezing us from all sides. Not if we break the blockade, Voss countered. Seraph, focus fire on the lead ship. Target their communication hub. Understood, Seraph replied, and the Resolute's cannons roared to life. Blasts of energy ripped through the void, striking the lead ship with pinpoint accuracy. The vessel erupted in a blaze of light, scattering debris into the enemy formation. But the retaliation was swift. Plasma torpedoes streaked toward the Resolute, slamming into its shields. The bridge shook, and warning lights flickered across the consoles. Shields at 75%, Seraph reported. Voss turned to Lyra. How much longer? 5 minutes, she said, her fingers flying across the console. If you can keep them off us, I'll get your systems synced with the defense grid. A desperate maneuver. The enemy ships pressed their assault, bombarding the Resolute with relentless firepower. On the ground, the Valexian defenders watched helplessly, their eyes fixed on the fiery battle above. Voss leaned over the command console. Harper, prepare the maneuver. We're taking this fight to them. Yes, Captain, Harper said, her expression grim but determined. Lyra looked up, alarmed. What are you planning? We're going to punch through their formation, Voss said. If we stay here, we're sitting ducks. That's insane, Lyra said. You'll expose your ship to even more fire. And buy you the time you need, Voss shot back. Do your part, and we'll survive this. The Resolute surged forward, its engines blazing. The crew braced themselves as the ship barreled through the enemy line, firing in all directions. Explosions lit up the darkness, and enemy ships struggled to keep up with the unexpected maneuver. Cliffhanger. The betrayal. Lyra's hands moved faster than ever, her mind racing to integrate the Valexian grid. But just as the final connection was made, a hidden signal appeared on her console, a transmission from within Valexia's bunker. Someone on the ground was broadcasting to the enemy fleet. She froze, her blood running cold. Captain Voss, she said, her voice trembling. We've been betrayed. Voss's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? The invaders. They've been given our defense codes. Someone on my council is working with them. Before Voss could respond, The Resolute shook violently. A massive energy surge struck the ship, disabling several systems. The enemy fleet had adjusted, their weapons now perfectly calibrated to bypass Phylexian defenses and human shields. The bridge went silent except for the sound of alarms. Voss clenched his fists, his voice low and dangerous. Whoever betrayed us just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Lyra stared at the display, dread filling her heart. And it might cost us everything. The rescue mission. The UNS Resolute was battered but far from defeated. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and smoke hung in the air on the bridge. Captain Ryan Voss stood in the center, unyielding, his sharp eyes scanning the tactical display. The enemy fleet was reorganizing for another attack, emboldened by the betrayal on Phylexia. Damage report, Voss barked. Shields at 45%, multiple weapon systems offline. Seraph replied, her voice calm despite the chaos. We can sustain 3 more direct hits before critical failure. Voss clenched his jaw. That's 3 hits too many. Harper, reroute power from secondary systems to the shields. Lyra, are the ground defenses operational yet? Lyra's hands flew across the alien tech interface. The grid is live, but the sabotage runs deep. Whoever betrayed us has compromised critical components. Before Voss could respond, another warning signal blared. The invaders weren't just targeting the Resolute. A new fleet segment broke off, descending toward Phylexia's surface. The Hidden Sanctuary. On Phylexia's surface, in the Hidden Sanctuary nestled deep within a mountain range, civilians huddled together in fear. The sanctuary wasn't just a refuge. It also concealed ancient Phylexian technology that could tip the balance of the war. The invaders knew this. And now, so did the Resolute. Lyra's holographic map glowed brighter as she pinpointed the enemy's movement. They're heading for the sanctuary. If they breach it, they'll find our relic weaponry. And use it against us, Voss finished grimly. Seraph, prepare a strike team. I'm leading this mission myself. Harper spun around in her chair, alarmed. Captain, the ship. We'll hold without me, Voss interrupted. If we lose the sanctuary, the entire planet is finished. You have the con, Harper. Don't let this ship fall. He turned to Lyra. You're coming with me. Lyra blinked in surprise. What? Why? Because you know the sanctuary better than anyone. And I need someone I can trust, Voss said, locking eyes with her. Can I trust you? For a moment, Lyra hesitated, the weight of the question heavy in the air. Then she nodded. Yes. Let's go. Descent into danger. The Resolute deployed a sleek dropship that cut through the planet's atmosphere like a knife. Voss and his strike team sat in tense silence, their weapons gleaming under the faint interior lights. Lyra sat beside him, her usually composed demeanor cracking under the weight of the mission. What if we're too late? She asked quietly. We won't be, Voss said firmly. We can't be. The dropship touched down just outside the sanctuary, the mountain's jagged peaks casting ominous shadows. The team disembarked swiftly, their boots crunching against the rocky ground. Overhead, enemy ships hovered, deploying ground troops to storm the sanctuary. Seraph, give me a layout of the area, Voss said, adjusting his helmet. A holographic map appeared on his visor, showing the sanctuary's defenses and its vulnerabilities. Enemy forces are concentrated at the main entrance, Seraph informed. Recommend flanking maneuver through the eastern ravine. Voss turned to his team. You heard her. Move out. Inside the sanctuary. The team navigated the narrow ravine, the air growing colder as they approached the sanctuary's hidden entrance. Lyra led the way, her bioluminescent markings faintly lighting the path. The sound of distant gunfire and explosions grew louder. As they entered the sanctuary, Lyra's expression darkened. The once grand halls, carved with intricate Phylexian designs, were now filled with the echoes of battle. The invaders had already breached part of the defenses. This way, Lyra urged, leading the team deeper into the sanctuary. The control room is ahead. If we can secure it, we can override the systems and repel the invaders. Voss nodded. Keep moving. We're running out of time. The ambush. The team entered the control room, only to be met with a hail of gunfire. Enemy soldiers had anticipated their arrival. Voss and his team dove for cover, returning fire with precision. Lyra crouched behind a console, frantically accessing the controls. "I need more time," she shouted over the chaos. "We don't have time," Voss yelled back, firing at an advancing enemy. "Focus, Lyra. We'll hold them off." The firefight intensified, the room filling with smoke and the acrid scent of burning metal. One of Voss's soldiers fell, struck by a plasma bolt. The captain's resolve hardened. "Frag grenade, now," he ordered. A soldier hurled a grenade into the enemy ranks, the explosion clearing a path. Voss seized the opportunity, charging forward and taking out the remaining soldiers with ruthless efficiency. "Clear," he called. Lyra didn't respond. She was still focused on the console, her fingers trembling as she entered the final commands. The sanctuary's defenses hummed to life, energy barriers and automated turrets activating throughout the halls. "It's done," Lyra said, her voice shaky but triumphant. "The invaders are locked out." Cliffhanger. The superweapons revelation. Before the team could regroup, the console Lyra was working on flickered with an unexpected energy surge. She frowned, studying the readings. "What is it?" Voss asked. This isn't just a defense grid," Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's a weapon here. An ancient one. My people buried it centuries ago." Voss's eyes narrowed. "What kind of weapon?" Lyra hesitated, her glowing eyes meeting his. "One that could destroy fleets, entire worlds." The room fell silent as the gravity of her words sank in. But before they could react, a new alarm blared. The invaders had detected the weapon, and they were sending reinforcements. Voss tightened his grip on his rifle. "Looks like we just found the prize they're after, and now we have to protect it." Lyra stared at the console, fear and determination warring in her expression. "Or use it." The superweapon's secret. The revelation of the ancient superweapon sent a ripple of tension through the control room. Captain Ryan Voss stood rigid, his gaze fixed on the glowing console as Lyra explained its capabilities. The weapon was massive, buried deep beneath the sanctuary, and powered by a core of unstable Valexian energy. If activated, it could wipe out entire fleets, but at a terrible risk. "This weapon is incomplete," Lyra said, her voice laced with urgency. "The energy core is unstable. If we try to fire it, it could destroy the entire planet." Voss's brow furrowed. "And if we don't use it, the invaders will get their hands on it and finish what they started." "Captain," Seraph's voice interrupted, "enemy reinforcements have landed near the sanctuary. They'll breach the outer defenses in 10 minutes. Lyra stared at the console, her bioluminescent markings dimming as doubt crept in. "This isn't just about the invaders, Voss. If this weapon falls into anyone's hands, humanity's included, it could tip the balance of power across the galaxy." Voss placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "Then we make sure it doesn't fall into anyone's hands. But first, we survive." The standoff. Outside the sanctuary, the invaders regrouped, their forces bolstered by new arrivals. The Valexian automated defenses held the line for now, but the cracks were already showing. Heavy artillery battered the energy barriers, while waves of enemy troops swarmed the perimeter. From their position within the sanctuary, Voss and his team monitored the situation. The tension was palpable as they prepared for the inevitable breach. Lyra worked feverishly on the superweapons console, trying to stabilize its energy core. "I can't fully activate it, but I might be able to charge a partial pulse. It won't destroy the fleet, but it could disable their ships long enough for us to regroup." "Do it," Voss said without hesitation. "Seraph, how much time do we have?" "Outer defenses will collapse in 8 minutes," the AI replied. Voss turned to his team. "We hold this ground until Lyra finishes. no matter the cost. The betrayer revealed. As Lyra worked, a private communication channel crackled to life on her console. It was a Valexian voice, familiar and filled with malice. She froze, her heart sinking. "Lyra," the voice sneered. "Did you really think you could stop this?" It was Counselor Drex. "You betrayed us," Lyra hissed, her hands trembling. "You gave the invaders access to our defenses." "I secured our future," Drex shot back. "The invaders promised Valexia a place in their empire. You and your human friends are only delaying the inevitable." Voss stepped closer, hearing the exchange. "He's buying time for the invaders to reach the core." Lyra's markings flared with anger. "Not if I stop them first." The inner chamber. Voss led his team deeper into the sanctuary, leaving a small contingent to defend the control room. Lyra followed closely, her mind racing. The super weapons core was housed in an inner chamber, a place few Valexians had ever seen. As they approached, the air grew warmer, crackling with energy. The chamber was vast, its walls lined with glowing Valexian runes. At its center was the core, a swirling orb of unstable energy, suspended within a massive containment field. It pulsed like a heartbeat, casting eerie shadows across the room. Lyra immediately began accessing the control terminal near the core. "If I can recalibrate the containment field, I might be able to stabilize it enough for a single pulse." Voss nodded. "Do it. We'll hold them off." The final assault. The invaders breached the sanctuary's outer defenses, their forces pouring in like a flood. Voss and his team held their ground, using the narrow corridors to their advantage. The sound of gunfire and explosions echoed through the sanctuary as the invaders closed in. "Captain, they're overwhelming us," one of his soldiers called out. "Hold the line," Voss shouted. "Buy Lyra the time she needs." In the chamber, Lyra's fingers flew across the console. Sweat beaded on her forehead as the core's energy levels fluctuated wildly. Seraph's voice came through her communicator. "Warning. Core instability increasing. Containment failure imminent." I know. Lyra snapped. "Just a little more time." The betrayer's arrival. The door to the inner chamber hissed open, and Counselor Drex stepped inside, flanked by two heavily armed invader soldiers. His smug expression faltered when he saw Voss standing between him and the core. "Drex," Voss said, leveling his rifle. "You're either very brave or very stupid. This is bigger than you, human." Drex sneered. "Step aside. Valexia's survival depends on this weapon falling into the right hands." "You mean theirs," Voss replied, gesturing to the invader soldiers. Before Drex could respond, Lyra shouted from the console. "Voss, the core is ready for a partial pulse, but we need to activate it manually." Voss didn't hesitate. He fired at the invader soldiers, taking them down with precision shots. Drex lunged toward the console, but Lyra intercepted him, tackling him to the ground. "Your greed has doomed us all," Lyra shouted, pinning Drex. Cliffhanger, activation, and sacrifice. Voss ran to the console, his hands moving quickly as he followed Lyra's instructions. The core pulsed brighter, the energy field crackling dangerously. "Once I start this," Voss said, glancing at Lyra, "there's no turning back." "Do it," Lyra said, her voice resolute. "We don't have a choice." Voss slammed the final command into the console. The core unleashed a massive wave of energy, lighting up the chamber in a brilliant flash. The pulse spread outward, disabling every enemy ship in its path and knocking out the invaders inside the sanctuary. But as the light dimmed, Seraph's voice came through, grim and urgent. "Warning. Core stability compromised. Containment failure in 2 minutes." Voss and Lyra exchanged a grim look. The sanctuary, and everyone in it, was about to be consumed by the weapon they had just unleashed. Betrayal and sacrifice. The inner chamber of the sanctuary was bathed in pulsating red light. The core's energy field flickered dangerously, casting eerie shadows across Captain Voss and Lyra's determined faces. Alarms blared, and Seraph's voice echoed in their communicators. Core containment failure imminent. Evacuate immediately. But there was no time to run. The massive energy surge would engulf the sanctuary, and possibly the planet, if they didn't stabilize it. Voss turned to Lyra, his voice calm despite the chaos. Options, he asked. Lyra's glowing markings dimmed as she studied the console. I can vent the excess energy into the weapon's containment systems. It might stabilize the core, but it would overload the entire sanctuary. And if we don't? Voss asked. Lyra hesitated, her voice shaking. Then Valexia is gone. The price of survival. Voss didn't hesitate. Do it. Lyra's hands flew over the console, bypassing safeguards and rerouting energy pathways. The core grew brighter, its pulsing light becoming almost blinding. The sanctuary itself seemed to groan under the strain, its ancient walls cracking. Drex, still restrained by a Valexian soldier, shouted in desperation, "You'll destroy our legacy. You're no savior. You're a fool." Voss glanced at him coldly. "You betrayed your people, Drex. You don't get a say." The ground shook violently as the invader forces regrouped outside the chamber. Through the shattered sanctuary walls, Voss could hear their approaching footsteps. Reinforcements were coming, and they were determined to claim the superweapon. A final stand. Voss turned to his remaining soldiers. "We hold them here. No one gets past this point." The soldiers nodded grimly, their weapons ready. Lyra glanced up from the console, her voice urgent. "Captain, I need at least 3 minutes to complete the venting process." "You'll have it," Voss promised. The first wave of invaders burst into the chamber, their weapons blazing. Voss and his team fired back, using the rubble and shattered consoles for cover. Plasma bolts lit up the room, and the smell of burning metal filled the air. The firefight was brutal. One by one, Voss's soldiers fell, their sacrifices buying Lyra precious seconds. Voss himself took a hit to the shoulder, but gritted his teeth and kept fighting. The thought of failure, of the invaders taking the core, was unthinkable. The core's wrath. Lyra's voice broke through the chaos. "It's ready. I'm initiating the venting process now." The core flared with a deafening roar, sending out a shockwave that knocked everyone in the chamber to the ground. The invaders froze, their weapons falling silent as the room filled with a blinding light. The venting process was working, but at a cost. The sanctuary's systems began to collapse, sparks flying as ancient circuits overloaded. The structure trembled violently, and chunks of the ceiling began to fall. "We need to move," Lyra shouted, pulling Voss to his feet. "What about the invaders?" Voss asked, wincing as he clutched his injured shoulder. Lyra glanced at the core. "They'll be caught in the collapse. But so will we if we don't leave now." The betrayer's fate. As they turned to leave, Drex lunged toward the console, his face twisted with desperation. "You don't understand. We need this weapon. It's the only way Valexia will survive." Lyra stepped forward, her voice cold and resolute. "Valexia doesn't need traitors like you." With one swift motion, she disabled the console, ensuring no one could stop the venting process. Drex stumbled back, realizing too late that his gamble had failed. The soldier restraining him dragged him toward the exit as the chamber began to collapse. Escape and loss. Voss, Lyra, and the surviving members of the team sprinted through the crumbling sanctuary, the ground shaking beneath their feet. The core's light grew brighter behind them, casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. The group barely made it out as the sanctuary's entrance collapsed behind them, sealing the superweapon, and the remaining invaders inside. Outside, the Valexian forces and civilians watched in stunned silence as the mountain itself seemed to implode, a massive plume of energy shooting into the sky. The invader fleet, still disabled in orbit, was caught in the blast. The energy waves surged through space, frying their systems completely. The remaining ships drifted lifelessly, their threat neutralized. Cliffhanger. A new threat. As the dust settled, Voss stood among the ruins, his injured arm hanging limply at his side. Lyra approached him, her face a mix of relief and grief. "We did it," she said softly. "The invaders are defeated." "For now," Voss replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "But the galaxy doesn't stay quiet for long." Before Lyra could respond, Seraph's voice interrupted. "Captain, I'm detecting a new signal. It's faint, but it matches known profiles of an ancient Valexian distress beacon. It's originating from deep space." Lyra's eyes widened. "That shouldn't be possible. Those beacons were decommissioned centuries ago." Voss's jaw tightened. "Looks like your ancestors left more surprises. And I don't think we're the only ones who noticed." The camera pans upward, showing the drifting remains of the invader fleet. In the distance, another shadow emerges. A massive, unidentified vessel slowly approaching the system. Humanity's gamble. The ruins of the sanctuary lay silent, a grim monument to Valexia's survival. The core's destruction had sealed away the ancient superweapon and annihilated the invaders' immediate threat. But the faint signal detected by Seraph was a harbinger of something far worse. Above the planet, the UNS Resolute hung in low orbit, its hull scorched but resilient. On the bridge, Captain Ryan Voss stood at the command console, his injured shoulder bandaged hastily. His crew worked tirelessly, scanning the approaching vessel that loomed larger with each passing moment. "Seraph," Voss said, his voice tense, "what are we looking at?" The AI's calm tone carried an edge of unease. "Analyzing. The vessel matches no known designs. It is larger than any ship previously encountered. Energy readings suggest a level of technology far exceeding both human and Valexian capabilities." Lyra, now standing beside Voss, stared at the holographic display. Her bioluminescent markings glowed faintly as her mind raced. "That's not an invader ship," she said. "It's something older." Voss turned to her. "Older?" Lyra nodded. Before the Valexians divided into nations, there were stories of an ancient fleet that vanished into the stars. If this ship belongs to them, we might have awakened something far more dangerous. The first contact. The massive vessel stopped just outside Valexia's orbit, its presence dominating the tactical display. The bridge crew held their breath as the ship sent out a signal, a deep, resonating tone that seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull. "Open a channel," Voss ordered. A flicker of light appeared in the air, forming a holographic figure. It was humanoid but unmistakably alien, its form sleek and metallic, its eyes glowing with an unnatural intelligence. When it spoke, its voice was a chorus, both melodic and terrifying. "We are the custodians," it said. "You have trespassed upon forbidden relics." Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. "Custodians? You're from the ancient fleet." The figure's gaze shifted to her, its eyes narrowing. "We are protectors of balance. The relic you unearthed was never meant to be touched. Its activation has disrupted the equilibrium. Reparations must be made." Voss crossed his arms, his expression hard. "Reparations? We just saved this planet from annihilation." The custodian's voice grew colder. "You are an anomaly, human. Your kind spreads chaos across the stars. Balance demands correction. A calculated risk." Voss turned to his crew, his mind racing. The custodian ship wasn't just a threat. It was a judgment, and humanity's survival hinged on his next move. "Seraph," he said, "analyze that ship. I need weak points, vulnerabilities, anything we can use." Seraph responded quickly. The vessel's design suggests minimal offensive capabilities, but its energy output indicates a catastrophic defensive system. Direct confrontation would result in the destruction of the Resolute. Lyra shook her head. "You can't fight them, Voss. They're not invaders. They're something else entirely." "Maybe," Voss replied, "but I'm not letting them pass judgment on humanity without a fight." He turned to the custodian hologram. "You said reparations. What does that mean?" The custodian's eyes glowed brighter. The Valexians' tampering has destabilized the system. It will be purged. Humanity's interference compounds the imbalance. Your species must submit to custodial oversight. Voss's jaw tightened. Submit. That's not happening. The custodian's tone became final. Then you will be eradicated. The final stand. The custodian vessel began charging its systems, a blinding energy field forming around it. On the bridge of the Resolute, the tension was palpable. Voss gave his orders with sharp precision. Harper, prepare evasive maneuvers. Seraph, deploy decoy drones and arm the EMP disruptor. If we're going down, we're taking them with us. Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. Wait, there might be another way. Voss turned to her, his expression skeptical but hopeful. I'm listening. Lyra pointed to the holographic map. The custodians aren't invincible. They're programmed to preserve balance, not destroy recklessly. If we can disrupt their systems long enough to prove we're not a threat, they might stand down. And how do we do that? Voss asked. Lyra hesitated, then took a deep breath. We overload the sanctuary's remains. The energy surge will mimic a systemic reset. It's risky, but it could force the custodians to recalibrate their directives. Voss nodded. Do it. The gamble. Lyra worked quickly, using the Resolute systems to access the shattered remnants of the sanctuary's core. The custodian ship unleashed a warning shot, a beam of energy that grazed the Resolute, sending shockwaves through the ship. Shields at 15%. Seraph reported. Captain, we cannot sustain another hit. Lyra, Voss called out. Almost there, she shouted, her hands flying across the console. Just a few more seconds. The custodian vessel charged another blast, its energy field growing blindingly bright. Voss stared at the tactical display, knowing this could be the end. Fire the disruptor, Voss ordered. The Resolute released its EMP, the pulse racing toward the custodian ship. Simultaneously, Lyra triggered the sanctuary's energy surge. The combined effect was staggering, an explosion of light and sound that rippled through space. The custodian ship faltered, its energy field flickering. The holographic figure reappeared, its voice distorted but clear. Anomaly. Recalibrating. Balance restored. The aftermath. The custodian vessel powered down, its ominous presence retreating. Voss and his crew let out a collective breath, the tension finally breaking. Lyra slumped against the console, exhaustion etched into her features. We did it, she said softly. Voss gave her a rare smile. You did it. The custodian ship lingered for a moment before vanishing into hyperspace, leaving Valexia in silence once more. On the ground, the Valexians began to rebuild, their trust in humanity strengthened by the alliance forged in fire. Final hook. As the Resolute prepared to leave Valexia, Lyra approached Voss on the bridge. The custodians were a warning, she said. There's more out there, things even we don't understand. Voss nodded, his expression grim. Then we'll be ready. Humanity doesn't back down. As the ship entered hyperspace, Seraph's voice echoed through the bridge. Captain, I've detected residual signals matching custodian energy patterns. They appear to be emanating from multiple locations across the galaxy. Voss stared out at the stars, his resolve unshaken. Looks like our work isn't done. The camera pans out, showing the Resolute disappearing into the vastness of space as faint custodian signals blink ominously in the distance.